Israeli troops shoot dead a Palestinian man. They wounded 19 other people, and crowds surged towards Gaza's border fence with Israel. It's the first significant violence since a truce between Israel and Gaza's Hamas rulers took hold.
Meanwhile, Israel's brinkmanship with Hamas fueling speculation Israel is using the conflict as a test run for an attack on Iran and as a way to gauge the location and reach of Hamas' battery of rockets, those rockets supplied by Iran. Bing West, former Assistant Secretary of Defense, he's the co-author of Into the Fire, a first-hand account of the most extraordinary battle in the Afghan war. Good to see you. So is it fair to say, then, that if this is not at all about Gaza, but indeed about Iran, and that this is a test to see what sort of nuclear and arms that Iran has, and if it is a test, what have we learned?
Well, to the extent that it's a test of missiles and whether you can shoot them down, the advantage goes to Israel. They've shown they have an anti-missile system. On the political grounds, clearly, Prime Minister Morsi of Egypt has come out as being the most powerful local figure in the Arab Middle East. And the third thing that's really puzzling, about 3 weeks ago, the United States held an exercise with Israel where we had American troops on the ground at our anti-missile batteries inside Israel. So that leaves open the question whether President Obama is thinking that we'd have Americans in Israel involved if there were a war between Israel and Iran.
Okay, let's break this down because you said a lot of key things there, of course. Let's go back to Morsi and the fact that you're saying that because he brokered this ceasefire deal here, however tenuous it might be, but if he brokered this, we're talking about that he is now powerful. You see his own people now, a small group at the moment, they're protesting of this grand sweeping power that he has anointed himself with. So I want to know, too, in terms of testing, political testing, which I think is a key word there. What do you think is the test on the part of President Obama as well as Prime Minister Netanyahu in terms of testing Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood in terms of how they proceed from here?
There's not much Netanyahu can do. President Obama is really stuck now. That is, he wants to court Morsi, but now that Morsi's acting extra illegally, he's almost forcing President Obama to have to rebuke him publicly. And the question is whether President Obama will do so.
Why wouldn't the president do that?
Well, because if he says you ought to do something different, and Morsi says, then the president looks weak.
Okay, so then, of course, President Obama has to, and insofar is, working in lockstep with Prime Minister Netanyahu. So what can they do together as a combined force? Because I think also this last, this incursion here was a way to sort of show the power, show the Middle East that, in fact, America is still lockstep with Israel and that there is power in the two of them working in concert.
Oh, I don't know about the word lockstep when you talk about President Obama and Netanyahu. I think the first thing they could do if they're in lockstep is stop yelling at each other.
Well, when I say, but they have to put forth a united front at the very least. We understand. Look, I fully am aware of how tenuous that relationship is, but they were able to come together on some sort of agreement, however layered it is. We're not sure at this point. That remains to be seen. But in terms of posing a force in front of Morsi, they've got to be in concert together. Do you agree?
Well, I thought it was interesting that Morsi had actually manufactured the ceasefire before Secretary of State Clinton arrived. But out of just deference to the United States, both Morsi and Netanyahu waited until Secretary of State Clinton was there before they announced it.
Right.
Which really, in balance, meant we didn't have as much power as we've had in the past.
We as Americans?
Yes, yeah.
And why do you think, there's so much I want to talk to you about, I'm running short on time, but let me get this in here. Why do you think they waited until Secretary of State Clinton arrived and not have the President Obama, be the one to sort of forge that ceasefire with Morsi alone?
Oh, wow. Because first, both countries take money from us. So
Yes.
the golden rule, we have a little bit of power with each of them. And so they don't want to be rude to us. On the other hand, they don't want to be saying we can dictate to them.
Right.
So the most interesting thing that I saw out of this entire little brouhaha was, number one, the anti-missiles worked. And number two, it seemed like we were getting the signal that if it gets really serious, our American soldiers would be on the ground with anti-missile systems in Israel. And that would really be something dramatically new.
And that's something dramatically new, and as we know that you can't really trust the players involved here. So I ask you, final question, Mr. West, when could we expect that other shoe to drop?
Well, only, it seems to me, well, that's an interesting question. All right, let's look at it this way. Netanyahu is going to run for re-election in January. If he receives a solid majority, then he's going to be in a position to say to Iran, if you continue, I'm going to strike you sometime, say, in March. Just before he does that, he's liable to ask, can we have American ships and maybe even American batteries ashore that can shoot down missiles? So we're talking about something about next March.
That's what I'm understanding, that spring of 2013 will be an interesting time. We will keep our eyes on that time period as well as every step along the way. Mr. Bing West, thank you very much for your analysis.
Thank you.